welcome to Creativity Conversations. This is episode 32, and I'm with the beautiful, talented Ashley Bathgate. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Nina. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we are today going to talk about all things creative, and we may redefine the term, and we'll just see how the conversation goes. So I'm going to read just a little bit of Ashley's bio because it's quite extensive, and we'll cover that as we go through the call. But this will just give you a little bit of a taste of Ashley's background. American cellist Ashley Bathgate has been described as an eloquent new music interpreter, New York Times, and a glorious cellist, the Washington Post, who combines bittersweet lyricism along with ferocious chops. And you'll have to define that for us, according to the New York Magazine. Her impish ferocity, rich tone, and imaginative phrasing, again, New York Times, have made her one of the most sought-after performers of her time. The desire to create a dynamic energy exchange with her audience and build upon the ensuing chemistry is a pillar of Bathgate's philosophy as a performer. Dynamism drives her to venture into previously uncharted areas of groundbreaking sounds and techniques, breaking the mold of a cello's traditionally perceived voice. Collaborators and fans alike describe her vitality as nothing short of remarkable and magical for all who are involved. For 10 years, Ashley was a member of the acclaimed sextet Bang on a Can All-Stars. She's also a member of the chamber music group Howl, Two Cents with pianist Lisa Moore, and Bonjour, a low-strung percussive quintet. Okay, where should we go?
Oh, I need a new bio. Does anybody want to write me a new bio that's
Well, I'm
less
not reading the other two pages.
smarmy and like name droppy? One of these days, I've always wanted to just like have one of those super witty, I don't give a crap bios that's just like I'm not gonna say anyone's name or any New York Times quote or quote from anywhere and just like talk about my hobbies and interests
And your dog.
one day. Yeah. But now that you read it back to me, I'm like, oh gosh. Anyway,
So,
hi everybody.
yeah, so nice to have you on the call, Ashley. Tell us a little bit about how you got interested in the cello.
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna try to be move quickly through this, so I don't take up too much time. But basically, I grew up in Saratoga Springs, New York, upstate from the city, about 3 hours. Um, and my mother was a barrel racer, which is a kind of Western riding with
Oh,
quarter
yeah,
horses.
yeah.
And so I was like a rodeo brat. Like they were, until I was in school, they were dragging me on the rodeo circuit, um, mostly in the South, like Oklahoma and Tennessee and Texas and all that. And I do have some memories from this time where we would be at honky tonks. They took me to the Grand Ole Opry. Um, uh, like I was meeting all these country stars like Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn and Minnie Pearl. And I think I just was early on very fascinated with performing because even at the honky tonks and music like concerts that we would go to after these rodeos, like I would be running up to the stage and like sitting there and just like wide-eyed and into it. And then there is some picture like floating around of me. It's super cute. Like I think I must be 3 years old and I have like rollers in my hair and like a fake microphone and a fake guitar. And like I'm in my mother's high-heeled shoes, just like looking fiercely, singing Patsy Cline. So music was a part of my life early on. And I loved singing. And then, so from country music, then it was church choir and glee club and chorus and all of these things. And then finally they offered the instrument petting zoo when you're in fourth grade. I think I was about 9 or so. And I picked the cello really because it was one of the biggest. Maybe for some reason I knew the double bass wasn't for me. But cello, it just felt that was the one I gravitated towards. And of course your teacher's like, oh, your hand is perfect for the cello, which probably isn't true, but she said that. And then I started playing this instrument and I took to it very quickly and I was good at it. And then I remember a year later, I was sort of like, oh, okay, enough cello. Now I want to play a wind instrument. I want to play the saxophone, but you had to play the clarinet to get to the saxophone. You couldn't just start with sax. So I was going to play the clarinet and I was all geared up to start a new, extracurricular within that school year. And the string teacher came to me and she said, oh, would you please just give it one more year with the cello? You're really good at it. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And I stuck with it. And then I just never stopped. So I started taking private lessons in the community. I joined the Empire State Youth Orchestra, which is an incredible organization. Sort of very fortunate to have that in our community. They're based in Schenectady. We would rehearse at Shaker, but we got opportunities to perform in Carnegie Hall, at Tanglewood, in Ozawa Hall, at Proctor's every year for the Melodies of Christmas program that would be televised on CBS. And they had concerto competitions, which I am an unprecedented two-time winner of the Lois Lyman cello concerto competition. So I won it twice, and I think that kind of got me hooked, because then I realized, ooh, I get to like play a solo with the whole orchestra. And we had this incredible conductor, Francisco Noya, gorgeous Venezuelan, piercing blue eyes at the podium. And I was like, I'll memorize this Brahms symphony if I can stare at you for the next 90 minutes. And so I did. And so anyway, there were all these influences and I had wonderful teachers. I was very lucky. And I was also big into sports. So I was a pitcher in softball and I played tennis. And these things, were both big parts of my, after school activity. But at a certain point, music won out. And then I continued my studies with Luis Garcia Renart at Bard College as my undergrad. And then I got my master's at Yale School of Music, studying with Brazilian cellist Aldo Paraso. And then I was hell-bent on moving to New York City. I think I always wanted to live in New York City, even from when I was a kid. And I remember one of my composition professors, Martin Bresnik, suggesting that I audition for the Bang on a Can All-Stars. And at that point, I didn't know who they were. I hadn't really done a lot of contemporary music. I didn't know the music of Steve Reich or Philip Glass even, or any of these minimalists or post-minimalists. And winning that audition and kind of immersing myself in the contemporary music scene in New York City, and obviously with that band we traveled all over the world and all over the US, that kind of like blew the lid off. I had always felt something was missing, because as a cellist or as a string player, typically, when you're learning to read music and you're playing in orchestra and chamber music ensembles, there's a traditional repertoire, right, that they tell you should play. Concerti, string quartets, symphonies, right? But what I listened to, and what I still listen to predominantly is country music, folk music, Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, R&B. Like I do, in a healthy diet of like what's out there today, but I have to say, like I hover in that 50s, 60s, 70s pocket when I'm listening to music. So how was I going to merge those worlds, of like what I love or what spoke to me the most, and then like being a cellist who plays classical rep? And so this new music ensemble kind of hit all those bases. There was a little bit of jazz, there was free improv, there was minimalism, post-minimalism, and then crossing over into working with indie rock bands and singers. Ornette Coleman, I didn't work with him, but the band had, and so we had a piece written by him, and all these other influences, along with the use of amplification, which was kind of huge. I mean, I hadn't played using a microphone or a pickup or any effects or pedals or things like that before. So that really intrigued me because all of a sudden my color palette was that much bigger,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's kind of what made me the most excited was that arrival. I was 23, just moved to New York City. Here I get to join this super exciting ensemble, travel the world. I'm continuing my studies essentially with them, and this leads me down this path of commissioning composers and working with them, and a little bit of writing my own music and improvising more, and even getting to use my voice again, which was something I had kind of left by the wayside. And one day they were like, "Oh yeah, you gotta sing. We didn't mention that, but you do." And so that was fun. And now people know that I sing too, and so they write music where I can sing and play at the same time. And
That's
anyways, that goes a
fabulous.
little bit beyond what you asked for, but
No, that's perfect. I think the first time I saw you or I met you, it was at Mass Mocha, and you were playing your cello with two bows. You may not have
yeah.
remembered that.
Well, but I know the piece. I mean, I think I remember. I forget what year it was, but I forget what year anything is at this point. What day are we even?
Yeah.
But yes, when I did the Ash Suite that summer, and that was Jacob Cooper's piece Ley Line, right, where he at the very end I whip out two bows and I'm kind of going nuts on it. I'm glad you got to see that.
Oh, that was so much fun. And then I think maybe the last time, no, it wasn't the last time, but when you were again at Mass Mocha, you did a combination of the Bach piece and was it Philip Glass or Steve Reich?
Oh, it was Philip Glass Songs and Poems
Yes.
paired with a Britten suite, solo suite for cello,
But you did a
right?
Bach piece too. Uh,
At Mass
um,
Mocha, they wouldn't have allowed that.
well,
Maybe I did. I won't, but they would always tell me that I couldn't ever. It was a stretch to get Britain, but I'm sure there was some Bach somewhere. I can't
or
remember,
else it was in
but I
another
I
reality.
or it could have, or maybe it was another show. But because you guys have come to a lot of my performances,
Yeah.
but in
Maybe the
any
last one
case,
was for the
yes. I
saving.
mean, I think the past several years, well, before, especially when I was working on that Ash project, I had commissioned the Sleeping Giant Collective, who are six composers that I had been to school with and knew. And the idea was that I was also unearthing and bringing back into my repertoire the six Bach suites.
Mm.
And those pieces were inspired by different elements and movements from those suites. And so I started doing that in concert a lot, mixing the two, and well, just it was a reason to go back to that repertoire, which I really love to do. And even these days, I did a performance with violinist Jill Levy, who's the concert master of the Albany Symphony. We did the Raval duo together, and I got her to do some contemporary music, and it was really fun. But I find that now, because I do so much contemporary music, I actually enjoy more when I get to return to that
Mm.
classical repertoire, and I approach it as if it were new music. So I have less fear and pressure, I guess, on myself than when I was doing it in college and grad school.
And by the way, for those of you who are listening or watching, there are lots of Ashley's videos on YouTube where you can see both the classical and the contemporary music, which is great. So you've said so many things already about the creative process, and clearly your collaboration with other composers and musicians have a lot to do with that. But how would you define your, and maybe you wouldn't call it this, but how would you define your own process of creativity? I mean, where's it come from? How do you tap into it? Where do your ideas originate?
Sure. I mean, well, you asked the other day, we had a little chat, and Nina asked me, well, what is your definition of creativity? And as a creative, I had to think for a second. I was like, wow, I've never asked myself that question. Um, but I think really what it comes down to in a few words is just it's your imagination, right? It's your personality, it's your imagination. It is the channeling, organization, and implementation of your imagination, and kind of like being brave enough to put that out into the world. Um,
So does
and
creativity involve bravery?
I think it absolutely does. I mean, otherwise we would never speak or make music or perform or really do anything. And that's the thing, is like it has such a, as I get older, and as I think we're going to discuss, it's taken on new meaning, and it's can be as simple as, our liar's dice, Jenny and Ben's holiday party, and, this kind of gathering of a small group of people, or it's performing on stage, or it's, maybe it's not, I used to think of myself as only a cellist. Okay, well, that's what I do. I sing and I do all these other things as hobbies or extras, but I studied cello, so I must be a cellist, and this is like the only thing that people will know me as, and this is the only thing that's legit. When in fact, I'm trying to break out of those things. I don't want to be known as just a cellist or just a contemporary cellist. I use my voice. I write. I mean, especially during this pandemic, I think I've shed my identity in a way, because I'm not doing what it is I normally do. I'm not doing live performance, and I've had to find other ways of channeling my energy. And yeah, for me, like creativity, but also the output, right? Having an outlet for what's inside. And I'm an Aries. I'm an extremely extroverted person. I have a lot of emotion, a lot of, good and bad emotions. And so I feel like, well, if you play sports, then you can take it out in a physical way. But if you're a creative or an artist, like it's a more, maybe a gentler approach, or more intellectual or more feeling, that, but it needs to get out. At least for me, I
Yeah.
feel it needs to get out. Other people sometimes are like, I don't need this from you right now, but but I feel that it's necessary to put this out in the world, and to take some of the, maybe the more, what I would consider useless, or things that wouldn't help, or wouldn't be giving back to the community. I can channel it into music. I can turn it into a positive. And I think for me that's life-giving, and that's sort of like the root of why I do what I do, is just I have this thing inside of me that I've always felt like I'm performative, and I want to share, and I want to know people, and I really want to connect with people. And so I think when having an audience, whether it's virtual or in person, allows you to have this incredible connection with people, and often a nonverbal connection, which I think is really important. It's so cheesy when you're, well, music is the universal language, but it really is. I mean, it's something that like unites us, it grows us, I mean, I can go on and on about that. But in
So you
terms of
said,
where yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
you
No, you,
you go.
no, no, no. Zoom is canceling us out. You go.
There are two things that I just wanted to highlight because I think they're part of that urge to express, is that it comes through us. There's it's, the channel. You use the word channel. It comes through us. And then in your talking about collaboration, that is even another boost, if you will, for expressing that thing that wants to come out. That, you know, what wants to show up, what wants to happen. And that seems certainly to be part of the bravery that comes with being willing to be creative. But on the other hand, it's like, so what? It's bravery. It kind of is, but it isn't, you know? It's only bravery, I think, when I'm attributing it to myself. How am I doing? How's it look? But otherwise, you know, we were talking about this the other day. If I'm pointing out, listen to this, you know, how beautiful this is. It isn't about me. It's about the music. It's about the creation. And that seems to take a lot of the self-absorption out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's this kind of lifelong journey of shedding your ego, right? I mean, it's a process. And sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm not there. I mean, that's a whole other discussion maybe, but I think that's important because that is like dropping that ego or being able to set it aside has allowed me to be more creative, has allowed me to be more in touch with who I am on the inside and therefore share a more authentic version of myself, I feel. And to not be afraid, you know, of sharing things or to not be filtering as much or censoring oneself or doing things the way that you want, that you think other people want to receive them, or take them in. So yeah, it goes towards like being a more authentic self and therefore a more authentic creator, I think. And that is freedom, isn't it? It's total freedom.
Yeah.
But not to side. Sorry, I wanted to also say about like collaboration. I mean, for me that's essential. I do solo work and performances, and I enjoy that part. But my, you know, this is a hard. Anyone who is an artist, it is a hard life. Like it's especially if you're a freelancer, like it's very unstable. It comes and goes. There's a lot of frustrating things about doing this for a living, but the one thing that keeps me going is just that hour or however long I'm on stage, or in a Zoom room. Man, that's like in the present, in the moment, true joy and happiness for me. Like that is the place, that is it, you know what I mean? And like certainly there are other things in life that are rewarding, but there's nothing like that time. And no matter how, you know, I was saying the other day how like my day can be just full of nerves and my stomach's in knots and I'm like fending off all of these like negatives and I didn't sleep the night before and yada yada yada, but then it's like you're on all of a sudden and you're in the moment, and it's equal to like meditation. It's equal to, you know, sometimes when I'm taking a yoga class, like it's that kind of feeling where you aren't thinking about the past, you're not worrying about the future, you're just there.
Yeah.
And especially when you're able to be there fully, right? Like that's amazing. And I don't feel that way when I'm alone on stage all the time. I mean, maybe I can be super in the music, but when there's other people around me and I'm like connecting visually and listening and responding, we're reacting to each other, you're in close proximity, so you're exchanging this incredible energy, not to mention the energy with the audience in front of you. I don't know. It's like, is there anything like that in the world? Like, it's such a magical feeling. And so my life without collaboration would just be not as rich, I think, as it is. And also the other thing is that I don't want to say I'm not something, but I would say that I'm much better at building something with another person, contributing, interpreting, taking direction, than I am at being the one who's the brains behind the whole thing, or who composed the piece. who's giving the direction, or so, it's like something in, at least at this point in my life, like I don't feel the ideas, if I have them, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to just run all this and I'll tell this person and this person, I'll hire them, and right, like I'm not that person. I'm like a more, I think, a cog in the wheel, or like I consider myself and I always talk about, I relate it to being an actor of some sort. It's like I put on the different hats. I interpret other people's music. And when I'm working on, a piece that I might commission, I'm not writing it, but boy, is it fun when I get to weigh in and I get to have that back and forth with a composer, where they're asking me for input, or where I'm editing the piece, or where I'm saying this works, this doesn't work. Oh, hey, I have an even better idea. That somehow gets me moving, and then I easily step into that role, maybe of being more creative. But left to my own devices, by myself, alone, I don't know. I don't know if I could be that composer who sits down at the computer or at their desk every day, and like I think the story is like Philip Glass. He wakes up every morning early and he just writes for 4 hours every day. I can't imagine doing that.
Well, that can't be the only way to do it, right?
No. I mean, there's dozens of ways to do it, but somehow that's not my forte. Like, I want to be in a room with people. I want to be having discussion. I want to be contributing ideas, and sort of having that exchange. And anyway, you get that from collaboration, and so I think it's a huge part of it's a huge part of creativity and making art. Right?
Don't you?
Yeah.
Here's a question I have about collaboration, because I definitely get a sense of what you're talking about. And it's also a place where we have the issue of egos coming up, right? You've got a group of people and they're all talented and full of ideas and ready to rock and roll, and yet egos can come in the way. I think it should be done this way. No, I don't think it should be done that way. How do you get beyond that?
Well, sometimes I am that. I mean, yeah, especially when I'm passionate about something or excited about something, I can be that person in the room who just won't shut up and who's like fighting for their idea, you know, tooth and nail, or charming my way to like getting my way. So I think we can all be that person. I try not to be. I think in a funny way, contemporary music and playing and banging a can for so many years, I learned to just kind of sit back more and relax and embrace, what comes at you, and not be too worried about, choose your battles kind of thing. But how do I get around it? I mean, well, the number one way is to surround yourself with people who aren't like that, who won't have that tendency, I think, to have their ego involved. Because at the end of the day, when that happens, it's about you. It's not serving like the art that you're making or the music you're making. And certainly, I think it's great when we develop a sense of when we cross that line too in ourselves, because we always will. We're human. But knowing when to step back, or knowing when to say, "Oh, I think I'm getting in the way of what my goal is, or what our goal is."
Yeah. What are you in service to?
Are you asking, or just
No.
No, I know
Well,
what you
that
mean.
could
I
be
know what you
another
meant.
question, but in terms of being in a group and working collaboratively in a group, it seems like that's an important question, whether it's stated overtly or not, is that what are we, what are we after? What's our goal? Is it just
Yeah.
this idea,
Well,
that person's idea?
I mean, much like life, I think these are all relationships, right? And they function well with good communication, boundaries, um, kindness, generosity, um, and self-awareness. I always talk about self-awareness. I feel like sometimes that's the thing I try to be the most, because I can be a very impromptu, like, or like say what I'm feeling so quickly and like not, shoot from the hip. That's a good way to put it. Because I'm that type of person, I feel like I've also had to develop a camera view of myself, and I surround myself with people who are also like that. So if we, it's fine to like be passionate about your ideas or to disagree and have this discussion. I actually think it's great because you can get somewhere from that. You might get to a better result or a better solution to a problem. But then comes the point of like, well, I want to hear what you think, or what do you feel about this? Or can we try? There's a language in every discipline, and music is no exception, of like how you ask it, or how you phrase it is just so important, can make all the difference in offending someone or hurting someone's feelings. I can't think of what I wanted to say, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like if we can be aware of our language, I think that's really important, and that's also in a way how you can get your own ideas across, and maybe you will get your way if you're willing to share the stage, or you're willing to kind of like open the discussion up in a more positive way. And I think the tendency in things that are more toxic or less productive is just when everyone's screaming and shouting over each other, or they're just so in their head of like, no, it can only be this one way. I mean, I've learned just it's never going to be one way. You know what I mean? There's a million ways to phrase something. There's a million ways, our definitions of intonation, even like at that fundamental technical level, are different. How we hear things are different. Our internal pulses, our rhythm is different. And I think I've come to realize that, everyone has talents and everyone has kind of a super intelligence, right? And we all have different assets in that way. And so I think it's important to be like keen. It's like when you meet someone, like I immediately am kind of do a scan, you know what I mean? Of like, okay, cool. Like I've talked to this person and I'm getting this vibe, and oh wow, like they're really good at this or they're really good at that, or that's not their strength. You know what I mean? You make these little notes, and I'm sure people are doing it with me too. But then, it's kind of like being able to highlight those positives, right, in everyone and in ourselves, and then throwing that into the pot as opposed to your opinions and convictions and stubborn natures, right?
Sounds awfully familiar. I wanted to go back to something you said earlier and then refer to an earlier conversation that just you and I had about being a multi-potentialite. And for those of you who haven't heard that term before, a multi-potentialite is someone who has many gifts and talents, and they pursue them. So someone might start out as, oh, a lawyer, and after a couple of years they're done. They become a chef, and after a while they become a yoga instructor. They just keep trying things, and for most people in our society, that's a bad thing. You're thought of as a quitter, you can't find something, and yet for those people who are talented or are willing to explore their possibilities, they get what they need out of each exploration on each subject that is interesting them. And you were saying earlier, like I was saying to you, I definitely think you fall into that category. And you were saying in our earlier conversation that you have been doing things during this lockdown, this stay-at-home lockdown, that you hadn't done before, and you were just looking at other things. So can you talk a little bit about what this particular time period has done for you? What has it given you different opportunities to see different possibilities in yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, as fraught as whole thing has been, and difficult, I think for all of us, there are silver linings, and one of them is having time, you know, and being in one place for most of it, which I wasn't because I was traveling all the time. I mean, basically, I went from a life that was almost constantly on the road, and learning music at a very rapid rate, you know, a new program every couple weeks, rarely the same music or the same people. And for a while, I had been feeling sort of just burnt out and frustrated, and like I couldn't catch my breath, and I couldn't. It's not that I couldn't come up with ideas, but I just felt like nothing was coming naturally, you know, or that if I did have an idea, I'd write it down, or I'd get as far as like the pitch or the, you know, the budget or something, but then I would abandon it. And it was just like everything was just a written down to-do list that was a mile long, and nothing was getting achieved because I was concert to concert and this to really like pay my bills and honor my responsibilities, and even my personal relationships, you know, suffering from that lifestyle. So I moved out of New York City. That was another, you know, thing. New York wasn't giving me what I needed, you know, which was some quiet and a little financial relief, and not that go 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 all the time vibe. So I moved back here about 2 years ago, and then of course this pandemic hit, and that brought everything to a screeching halt, which was sad and frustrating and really stressful at the beginning. But then I quickly just kind of switched gears and told myself, well, this is the time that you've wanted to do these other projects and things. And I thought that meant I was going to start playing my instrument all day long and recording and improvising and composing, right? But that wasn't where it went. And honestly, like I think for all of us, like it's been this up and down thing. Like I've said before, there are weeks where I'm completely unproductive and I'm on a loop of, you know, all my feelings, and like gone down the rabbit hole of like, what is my life right now? And then there are these pockets of like energy and inspiration, and all the synapses firing, and I am recording and playing, but I'm also doing other, like writing a lot, journaling, writing poetry. I told you in our last conversation how we had a few Zoom uh, meetings with Anne Bogart, who's a wonderful director, of and City Company is her company, and she was giving us acting lessons, and she was spoon feeding us Gertrude Stein and leading us through that poetry. And she's an incredibly inspiring human being. And so I kept for a week. We would meet for about 3 hours in the morning, and I would leave those meetings just vibrating, and I would have to go write, or I would have to go do something, or I would have to go listen to music, or go check out the reference or the book that she suggested. And I realized that that's kind of, I mean, this is where my creativity comes from, or where my energy comes from, I think, is other people being a sponge for the world. You know what I mean? Like, it's the films that we watch, it's the conversations we have, it's the music we listen to, the books we read, the suggestions that come from other human beings, these things. And people ask me, well, if you could do anything, you had all the money in the world, like what would you do? It's like, I just want to be a student. I want to be a student for the rest of my life. That's what I want. And it's not that the pandemic was the moment of aha, this had been cooking for a while. It just really brought everything into focus, where I just said, I don't have to be a cellist for the rest of my life. I probably will be a cellist for the rest of my life, but I'm going to do other things. You know what I mean? And I'm going to buy myself some cameras, and I'm going to learn how to use them. I'm going to get some good microphones and learn how to use them. I'm going to be able to stream a concert online. I am going to write if that's what's speaking to me at the moment. I'm going to, connect with my friends and give more value to my personal relationships, right? It's just bringing your priorities into focus. That's what this time has done for me. And also just kind of, working on those conflicts and sometimes traumas that we have in ourselves, that we've neglected. A lot of times our careers, like, they take us away from actually dealing with that stuff. And
Right.
I'm not a person who, I don't go to therapy. Not that I wouldn't, but it's kind of a, number one, it's a monetary thing. Insurance doesn't always cover that. But also, I'm gone all the time. You know what I mean? So it was like I didn't have a life where I could, oh yes, my weekly, this or that. So I started finding um, roots to that stuff in other ways, like meditation and yoga, and reading a lot of books on that. And then this time, right, like, of quiet and space to actually think and get at that has been really important. And again, like, all of this is kind of, it brings me to a place of feeling more free and out of the box of being a cellist. I mentioned to you, like, the Laurie Anderson video. I forgot to send it to you. I'll send it to you. Uh, it's a 5-minute interview where she says, well, I call myself a multimedia artist. And she says, what a bullshit term that is. Like, how ridiculous. Um, but it gets you out of the box, right? So nobody's going to label you. And as a result, she's free. She's free to create, and nobody's criticizing or questioning her path of, today I'm a composer, today I'm a violinist, a vocalist, a writer, a visual artist. She has a whole exhibit at Mass MoCA. The what is it? The VR. I don't know if you guys did that VR room at Mass MoCA. Holy
No.
moly, incredible! My dad did it too. He was like losing his mind, but it was, an amazing installation there. And so I mean, she's one of my heroes. Like, how cool is that? It's just like, she does what she wants to do, and there's no reason that any of us can't do what we want to do. And I just sort of have let go of um, thinking that I can only do one thing, or that I need to have a specialty. Um, and I think, pandemic aside, like, this is just something you maybe come across as you get older. Like, I'm 35 now, and I felt, even at as soon as 30, like, I started getting more antsy and like, ooh, is this where I want to be at in my life? And do I have everything I need? And, like, like, all these things. And truth be told, it's like, yeah, you're aware of you become increasingly aware of your mortality, and, like, and value your time. And, things like making $1 million, at least for me, become less important. Being a famous cellist, less important. What's important to me is that I'm constantly learning, and that I work on my relationships and my family, and having roots, and having inner peace and happiness, being healthy, mind and body. Um, and I think, just when I take the business and, like, the career side of it out, um, what brings me the most joy and what makes me feel the most convinced, I guess, or inspired, is just by taking in the world and having experiences, like the human experience. And you pull from all of those things, or having the time to just read a book cover to cover, to read poetry every day, or to meditate every day. This is what breathes life into the whatever art that I'm going to make. And that feels authentic, and that feels true. And and then I'm just not worried. I'm just not worried about the form, how it comes out, or, like, what instrument it is through. only that it's me expressing myself, and I believe in it. And I think that's the thing, is like we can fall into these ruts where maybe you have insecurity, or you're doubting, or you're burnt out, or you're tired of being a cellist. You know what I mean? Like I used to think that this was would be a horrible thing, right? If I stopped playing the cello, or even if I didn't pick like there was a certain point where it was like I felt, oh, well, I'm getting older now. Maybe I should have a specialty like Glenn Gould, right? Like maybe I should only play the Bach suites, or maybe I should only play classical music, or I should only do this kind of contemporary music. Now, for those who want to do that and who get their kicks doing that, I think it's wonderful, right? But I've never been that kind of person. I'm the multi-potentialite. I'm the drifter. I want to wear different hats and masks. I want to be different characters. I and I realized at a certain point, it's like I'm not going to change in that way. Like I'm always going to want to do different things, and try new things. And so why not just embrace that instead of thinking of it as a, oh, well, you're just not focused enough, or you're not working hard enough, or, if you don't specialize, you'll never, what's the word, like distinguish yourself, in your community or in the performance world.
And it's all made up. All of that
Yeah,
is made
it's
up.
all made up.
Well, without asking you directly, you've answered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask you. And if it's okay with you, I would love to open the conversation up to whoever is on the call here. And if you would like to raise your blue digital hand that's at the lower right-hand side of your participants box, or you can put something in the chat, or you can raise your hand, although I may not see that as quickly.
Yeah, Zoom keeps giving us more and more emojis.
Gary.
Gary's raising a real hand.
He
Okay.
is. So can you unmute yourself, Gary?
I can. I'm raising my real hand because I didn't see my digital hand for some reason. I have something other than what I usually see there. But you've answered a lot of the questions I was going to ask, Ashley, and this is really, really fascinating. I don't know if you've ever thought of this, but I'd love to hear your feeling about it. The impression I always get from you is just the sheer joy of being alive. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that as a link to creativity coming through you. How responsible is that, just that sheer joy of being alive in terms of feeding your creative spirit?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I haven't thought that much about it, but I suppose that's kind of the crux of it all. I mean, that's when people talk to me about watching me play, that's usually the thing that comes up first, is like your face, how I'm watching you enjoy or experience the music that you're playing. And somehow I've been able to, I won't say always, because it's not always, but a lot of the time it's like it's happening in real time. You know what I mean? There's nothing really put on or programmed. It's just I'm having like in the moment reactions to things. I'm smiling, I'm frowning, I'm crying, I'm right, and it's all over my face. I don't know where that came from, but it's part of who I am, right? And I think that's really injected into, well, whatever I do, but mostly performance. How is the joy of life in terms of my creativity? I mean, I think that's actually, it's more difficult for me than, I'm glad I look joyful all the time, but like any other human being, I'm totally not. I can be a real mess and really sad. So I get really sad about boys. It's really bad. Like, too sad about them. And like, I'm joking, but I'm not really joking. But in any case, we all have these things, right, in our life, and that's hard for me. Like sometimes I get in these ruts, or I get stuck, or I can't tap into that joy. And then I find it difficult, and I have to fight really hard to get back at it, or to bring it, front and center. But I have, whether it's taught or instinctual, like I think it comes, from my parents too, of, like when I was a kid, sorry, I'm gonna be on a lot of tangents here, but when I was a kid, my father, I think he just instilled this fearlessness in me. And one of the things I remember is that he, for some reason, thought it was a great idea to like have me climb our roof as a toddler. No idea why that was a great idea, but there's this picture of me just like ascending a ladder, and of course he's like holding me and he's right behind me, but he's like that's it in a nutshell of like what my childhood was like, go ahead, baby, like reach for the stars, and I'm gonna be here supporting you no matter what you do. But I want you to try, like shoot for the moon. I'm just gonna cry. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's so beautiful.
Ooh, you caught me.
That's just another expression of joy in a slightly different guise.
They're scary.
So it is joy, but I think this from childhood was like, don't be afraid of anything, and don't be afraid to be emotional or to feel. This is terrible. I don't cry like this, but don't be afraid, and like, don't be afraid to tell people how you feel, and to express yourself, and having that be okay from an early age. And believe me, sometimes it bites me in the ass big time. But for the most part, like having that freedom, I think is why I'm also able to like always come back to joy, or like gratitude of being alive, and knowing that there's something better around the corner. You know what I mean? Oh, Gary, why'd you do this?
You will notice that the tears didn't displace the joy, though, did they?
What? Sorry?
I said, notice that the tears did not displace the joy, did they?
No, and in fact, I feel excited, and I've always felt, it's like when we can be in touch with our feelings and like that real emotion, and even when it's the tragic, like such sadness or grief, I've always been a person who's really grateful to feel that at all. You know what I mean? And in all of the loss and things that haven't gone well, but I felt it, and I was really in it, and I really meant it. I mean things. I mean the things I say and that I do in life, and I feel that genuinely, and that is joy. I feel like that's a broad encapsulation of it all, but I feel lucky that I'm a person who can like tap into all that. And always come back, to the place of like, man, I'm so happy to be here and with all of you,
That's beautiful. Well, I'm not going to let you cry anymore. We've got a couple more people that have questions. Let's go to Martin. Martin, Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, I can. Hello. So Ashley, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it from start to finish. But early on, you said something that really stuck out at me, and you were mentioning, I'm going to butcher this. This isn't a direct quote, but you were mentioning going back from contemporary to classical, and then at some point there was less fear and pressure on the situation. And I was curious if you could talk about that, like how you kind of worked through that, and I don't know. I just love to hear you elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't even want to say classical music, because I think it can be anything in your life, but there's something about conservatory and like the way that we're trained as classical musicians, right? It's so geared around perfection and getting everything right and not making a mistake. And in some ways, it's geared towards not doing things by heart or by instinct or by ear, but by studying, reading what's on the page, and interpreting someone else's canon, or, you know. So really from early on, and I was taking lessons, and I was practicing like 2 to 3 hours a day, even in high school, and just working so hard at all of that. And then conservatory, and I do put a lot of pressure on myself, but also performing, and especially performing as a soloist, like it feels like I really got to do this well, and like don't fuck up, right, all the time. You don't want to make any mistakes. I used to memorize all of my programs and all of that music, and yeah, there was just always someone around being like, don't make a mistake. Whatever you do, don't make a mistake. Or don't show them that you're rattled. Don't show that that you lost your cool. If you make a mistake, don't show it on your face that you made the mistake. If you had a crappy performance, make sure you smile and you bow as if you did not, and so all of that, well, some of it I keep with me, but that's exhausting, and that's not how I want to live my life. And then I think getting into contemporary music, it's just a different scene. And especially the band I played in, Bang in a Can, it was like when people would make a mistake, they would smile on stage, or they would turn it into something cool, or they would improvise. Or, I always think of our guitarist, Mark Stewart, who just have this grin on his face, and he's bopping around, and he's an amazing improviser. So I know for a fact he wasn't playing things that were on the page, but he was rocking, you know what I mean? And it was great. Or, something would go wrong. Three of us would be lost, or like nobody was together, and we were totally losing it within the piece, and it's all going to pot, and then everybody would be like smiling, like, oh, it's okay. We'll find our way back. That kind of freedom, and this sort of, or not stressing about, oh gosh, we need to phrase it just like this, and like, look, Beethoven wrote this in the score, and you can't go away from that score. It has to be this way. It's like, there's none of that in contemporary music, because it's contemporary. It's brand new. It's never been performed before. There aren't a million recordings that exist of that music. An audience is probably less likely to come up at the end of your Louis Andriessen, Steve Martland, David Lang show to say, now in measure 52, I don't know about that sforzando there. I don't know about that note. I think you played a wrong note. But of course, in a Brahms sonata, right? Or a Beethoven symphony, like where a horn player squawks, or, like does something, I mean, then you'll hear about it. And so I became, without realizing it, I think I became afraid. It was just perpetuating my insecurities and my fear. So contemporary music freed me from that, and I felt at home there, and I felt like I was someone who was good at interpreting other people's music, so I was excelling at it. And as a result, I think then knowing, subconsciously or consciously knowing that I wasn't the cellist that anybody was looking to for the quintessential interpretation of the Bach suites or the Brahms sonatas, took that pressure off myself, and therefore I would go and play a Brahms sonata just not worrying about it anymore, and I would approach it as I had learned to approach new music, which is with freedom and as if it were fresh on the page, as if you interpret it how you'd like to interpret it, not how the recording dictated, or your teacher dictated, or someone else's performance or criticism of your performance. So does that answer your question? I think, and
Yeah.
now it's interchangeable. I feel like I pull from both worlds in different ways, and I'm able to line jump, You know what I mean? Like I can live in both of those places where I feel like if you only do one thing, I mean, back to the multi-potentialite example, it's like if you only do one thing your whole life, then maybe that's great, but like you missed out on other things, you know what I mean? And like you miss out on being able to live and adapt and function in other people's worlds.
Yeah, definitely. I could tell, honestly, just from your energy explaining the two, how much more free the second one was. That was really a great display. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah,
We've got a
thank
couple
you.
more questions. So, Ashley, if you can go for a few more minutes, let's do it.
Oh
And
yeah, of course.
let's go to Tracy. Tracy, can you unmute yourself, please?
I can. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I have to be honest, I never heard of you before, except that Nina Nina let me know that you were coming on, and I just went, okay, yeah. She had me at cello actually, and I have a cello behind me there. It's my son's. I don't think
Oh.
he's going to be going down the same path as you, but I really love I love that what's the multi-potential. I love that word, because a lot of what you said really reminded me of me, in that yeah, I've always just found it really hard to stick to one thing, and always judged myself for it, because it's like you said, Nina, our society doesn't lend itself to that kind of freedom and changing your mind. Oh, but you said you were going to do this, and why are you changing your mind? But one thing that really struck for me was your progression kind of through your early childhood and teens seems to have been very fluid, in that things showed up for you, and in particular, the different opportunities that you're like, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. Could you talk a little bit about that? It's like you didn't have much thinking about it, and it just arrived with great ease. I love that kind of flow.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was very lucky. I think you don't sometimes realize that until much later, even to grow up in an area where the public school had a music program,
Mm.
you know? And then it's like when I was living in New York, I realized, oh, not everybody has a music program. Not everybody can afford lessons or has access to musical instruments. So just right off the bat, it was just like where I grew up, where I was born, like presented these opportunities. And yeah, very supportive present parents, I think, who were there for me, and who were involved in everything that I did, all my extracurriculars, and especially music and my schoolwork. And I'm an only child. That's the other thing. Like, I suppose now I'm very sad about that. I wish I had siblings, but I think when
No,
you're
you
a
don't.
kid, no. um,
So much
but
drama. You're saving yourself, honestly.
but
I'm
that was
kidding.
another reason why, it was just like all the attention was on me, and all the resources, and well, yeah, I guess what plays into that too, and something you develop, is I talk about this a lot when I'm speaking to students, of just being aware of your talents and your strengths and your weaknesses. But if you can be more aware of what you're good at, or what you love, or what is really inspiring and motivating to you, then you're probably more likely to go down those paths that would be satisfying in those ways. And hopefully you have people around you who are guiding you and supporting you in the right ways too, which I did. It's kind of the perfect cocktail in a way. Oh, my dog! I'm gonna let my dogs out. Go.
Can't have a Zoom call without an animal.
There's,
No, I
yeah,
know.
they're everywhere.
They were so good though, up until right then. Anyway, in any case, I think, yeah, I was just very fortunate to have all those things working in the right way, and the right people, which is also to say, you know, another thank you to my parents of like making sure I had the right people. Like they did a lot of research of the teachers that I would go to, and I remember my dad saying specifically, like, I wanted someone who wasn't mid-career or like all about themselves. Like I wanted to find you someone who could really give their time and energy to you. And he did. He found this Rudolph Dublin, who was a cellist and used to conduct the Buffalo Philharmonic. He was in his 90s at the time, and his wife Helga was a professor at Skidmore. And they were this little elderly couple living in their cottage, and somehow my father found them, and I would go every week, and he didn't even want to charge for lessons, but you know, we thought it was good, and so he charged like $5 a lesson or something like that. So I would go with my $5 bill. Here, Mr. Dublin, thank you so much. And he would write these tunes for me. And I mean, but that wasn't something that I was able to find, right? So it was just having family, and I think people, a support system around me that were really doing their research and were really had the right intentions, and then having your mentors and teachers have the right intentions as well. But again, back to I think just embracing the things that you love or that you want to do, that's important, because often I think we can get tripped up or stuck thinking, oh, but I have to do this, you know what I mean? Or like, my father was a doctor, I should be a doctor, you know, or I can only do this one thing in life, or I have to go to this college, you know what I mean? Or that college, you know, because my parents went there or something like that. Like I was always given a lot of freedom, you know, to choose also what my path would be. And so therefore I never felt like I was forced down any road, or I really wasn't a rebellious kid either. You know what I mean? Like I think now they would tell you I'm quite rebellious. I'm a late bloomer. But I was really like a pretty good kid and a pretty good teenager. And, you know, once I went to college, it wasn't their problem anymore. And I had a great time at college. But like, I wasn't like at odds with anyone or anything. And I just worked really hard. And so I don't know if that's answering your question, but this was my path. And I suppose what I have to say, it's like, some of it is inherent, but some of it is just situation, and I just know that not everybody has those resources or those opportunities, and I think part of being an artist is that we have to create those opportunities, and we have to give back. Like I have to be the person who is helping along or supporting or dropping my ego with my students, and I have to be those people who taught me now, you know what I mean? Because, and especially now, right? Because look where we are, right? I mean, the other days, like so many things, just, we have to do better. And I think artists have this responsibility, you know what I mean, to our community, and to give back, and to offer. I try to offer transparency, you know. I try to talk about what it is to have a career, or like a career in music, or being a freelancer. I try to give the answers. You know, so many times I feel like people are reluctant to just tell you flat out, you know what I mean, like the truth, or like they don't want to hurt your feelings, or they'll give you half the answer but not the whole answer, so that you could really like latch on to it. And that has happened to me, and I never wanted to be that person. So I, like with my students or with people I talk to or classes I talk to, I feel like I'm just full on, and I'm like, okay, let me explain to you exactly what's happening when I put my finger here, or I have my bow here, or like how I'm thinking about this piece of music, and I'm giving them my internal dialogue almost. Because that's, to a certain extent, that's what I had, you know, and that's what I want from people. And so I think that's getting a little bit off topic, but, you know, it's who you surround yourself with, or who you can surround yourself with. What do you think? You've obviously thought about this more than I have, probably. So
no, I guess it's something that I am, that I'm very curious about at the at the last while, and it's that the less thinking we have about something, the more it seems to show up with greater ease. And that's what I heard when you were explaining your kind of early exploration with the music, was that things, and I get that your parents did the research and stuff, but there wasn't, like, put it this way, I don't think my son is going to be going down that route, because I have to get him to practice and he'll barely do 10 minutes. So I'm not going to spend my life fighting with him to play the cello,
But
It
my
just,
parents made me practice. I'm not going to lie about that either. I'd love to
okay.
sit here and tell you, like, oh, I was just so self-motivated as a 10-year-old. Like, I just couldn't do enough of the cello. No, come
Yeah,
on.
well, he's
Oh, yeah,
15, so let me say I'm
there
not
were
50.
crying fits in this
Okay.
household. Like, you wouldn't believe. My father one summer had to pay me to practice. He paid me to practice.
Okay.
So yeah, there's like the other side of it too. But but you're right. Like, I'm not a person who, I don't think too hard about those things, and actually um I battle sometimes of like being ambitious and like going for something or applying for something, auditioning for something, pitching something, and what feels more natural to me is like, what's going to come my way in the world?
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, the best things just came my way, right?
Yeah.
And I had that little ding light go off that said, yeah, you should probably embrace that. Like, the Bang on a Can is a great example, because it ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me. I remember I knew nothing about that, had no intention of being a contemporary musician. Someone made a suggestion. I applied. I moved to New York City, like, with nothing, with no plan, no job. I was living in a walk-up in Hell's Kitchen. And I remember the audition for Bang on a Can was like a block away, like around the corner. So I thought, well, that's funny, And then I went in and didn't know what to expect, wasn't planning to get it. And I had a friend who's in the New York Phil, and he helped me, get an audition. And so I was going to audition for that and do a bunch of that sort of stuff. And I played this audition. I remember leaving thinking, wow, that's like the best audition I ever played. I have no idea how did that go so well? And not thinking that I would get the job, right? And then there came a moment where I remember they said, okay, we need you to do, there was like a trial period, where you play concerts. And they said, we need you to do this date. And I remember telling the executive director, I was like, well, but that's my New York Phil audition date. And like, I don't know if I can. And he just wrote back very simply, and he was like, so you need to do this. He was like, you need to play this concert with us. Like, hint, hint. It would be really stupid if you don't do this. And I don't know, it was another like ding, ding, ding moment where I was like, yep, okay, I think that's what I need to do. And so I canceled my New York Phil audition. And I ended up, getting the job with Bang on a Can. And life has been full of those things. And truth be told, like, as nice as it would be to be a member of the New York Phil or to have that salary, I could never see myself. That's not what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have enough passion for that repertoire, and I am I want to be doing a bunch of different things and like in different places with different people. And so that wasn't the answer. Bang on a Can was the answer. And then even after I left Bang on a Can and left New York, I was sort of like, oh, what am I doing? Like, this is career suicide. I'm leaving the city and I've left this job that had so much exposure and opportunity, and I'm never going to work again. Nobody's going to know that I exist. And then like suddenly, calls came in, and I got really, I got these amazing opportunities. And then, the other new music ensemble, Eighth Blackbird, which is as well known as Bang on a Can, sort of just, oh, hi, so would you be interested in playing this concert with us? And yeah, I'm interested. And like, oh, also we need a cellist. Would you just like to, be in our, so those things, maybe it sounds as if that, oh, I'm so lucky, but part of it is just recognizing, right? The opportunities and the pings when they come along. And I prefer that kind of spontaneous path, I think, in the long run, than the one where I'm scratching and biting and fighting for something that maybe doesn't come as naturally, or doesn't make as much sense, you know?
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, that's great. I can't wait to go and listen to your music now, actually. Oh, thank you.
Tracy.
Okay.
Let's go to Robert. Robert's been so patient. Robert, can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, here we go.
Hey, Robert.
Hi, Ashley. So my question does extend upon something that you said about a half an hour ago. That that you had described the music as a kind of a of a of a of a universal kind of a language, and I would be interested to know the to know the types of things that to know the types of things that you do have to do to make the music as a to make the music as a universal language actually to have it be a successful type of a to have it be a successful communication.
Sure. Okay. Successful type of communication. Like the things that I do in order to make it successfully communicated. All right. Well, I mean, again, it's like not something I try too much at. I think I allow what's inside to come out, and I chose a career and path where I could kind of do that, you know, and like for an audience and be with an audience. Well, okay, let me speak about it a different way. I was thinking that one of the things I'm curious about, aside from music, but just in life, is psychology and universality. Like how are we different as humans, and how are we the same? And constantly surprised slash not surprised in the ways that we are all similar, even when you think you're different from someone else. And I love thinking about that. I love discussing that. I love talking about my feelings, your feelings, and having that kind of verbal exchange, understanding it, reading about it. I think if I had to choose another profession, it probably would be psychology. That, I guess, thinking about those things is something. In music, it's like we don't have to think about it, but it's there in the same ways. Because when I go to a concert, or when I listen to a piece of music, I can feel so many different things, including nothing sometimes. Maybe I'm closed off, and so I'm getting nothing from this live performance. Maybe I just broke up with someone, or someone passed away in my life, and I'm feeling grief and sadness, and I'm listening to the music, and I'm absorbing it as part of my my little world here, what I'm feeling in it, right? Or extreme excitement and adrenaline, and like I'm dancing in the club with my friends, to hip hop, which I love to do sometimes. And you're just bouncing and moving and like smiling and laughing, and all of those experiences, right? Like we know that they're universal. We know everybody we do a lot of the same things. We all attend concerts. We go dancing. We take walks in the park. We love our doggies. We love our families. So just thinking about all of those things, right? And I think that's why people come to concerts, right? That's why they come not only for an experience to come at them, but to be weirdly like in their own bubble of feeling, knowing that there's 100 other people around them, or 200 or 1,000, who might be experiencing the same thing as they are, and they are connected in that way. I don't know this person sitting next to me, but maybe we both shed a tear, or we laugh, and we might connect for a moment, right? Or I might observe someone 10 rows down. Like I've had people, I love when people, during quiet moments, right before the applause or something, or at an inopportune moment, or a place where you shouldn't applaud. I mean, there's no place I think you shouldn't applaud, but, unexpected, someone will just like shout, or like exclaim something, or they'll erupt into applause when nobody else does. Like, I love those moments, because then we're all like, yeah, that was so exciting, but I was just too scared to emote, and so I didn't, but you did, and that's great, and now I'm going to. And we can share this experience. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think this is kind of like, this is why I do what I do. This is why this is why we're here, is to kind of like share our little bubble with other people, and to feel it. And part of what's great about music is that, words fail. I remember I don't know who said this, but there's this Louis Andriessen opera that came, what was it called? It'll come to me. In any case, I remember these words, reading the subtitle. It said, both words and people fail. And I thought that was just really beautiful. I was like, yep, never were truer words spoken. And words, even when I tell someone I love them, and I know for a fact, like, I tell someone I love them, and I just know they're not hearing it the way I'm saying it, or the way I mean it. And it's tragic for me to have failed in the communication of how much I love that person. But then I'll do that thing, right, where I'll send like a Joni Mitchell song, or the lyric to something, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I failed at saying this, but this says it, and it doesn't have to come from me. And in that moment, I realized the universality of it, right? I realized that Joni is saying all these things. It's always, actually, it's a lot of the time it's Joni for me, where I'm like, yep, that lyric. And she's saying it, and she talks about this in interviews she gives too. How, God, if we would just step out of our own way, you know what I mean, and be more self-aware, like we could expand our minds that much more, and there would be so much more love in the world. But these, her words, you know, which may or may not be a personal experience, are then my words, and they're your words, and they're our experience. And somehow hearing that someone else suffered just as much or was just as grateful or happy as I was is like, makes me feel like I'm connected or plugged into my life and my existence, and like that's purpose, and that's why we're here. Yeah, I'm not going to go on. I don't think I answered your question, but,
No,
but hopefully I answered something.
I think it's an extremely good start.
Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
Any other questions?
We
Should
don't
we just
usually
go-
go this long, so it's a testament to your creativity and your brilliance and your love and joyfulness that we have gone on this far. Could you let us know what you're up to, where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm in this one place pretty much all the time. In Saratoga Springs. You can find me in this one Zoom room all the time. No. Yeah, well, I mean, I have a website, you know, www.ashleybathgate.com, which is woefully out of date at this point. I'm on all the socials, Instagram and Facebook, and I'm pretty sure there's lots of email and contact ability out there on the interwebs if you did want to get in touch. My music is on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's on Apple Music and Spotify and all the usual, you know, suspects in terms of streaming. And very hopefully, you know, I will be coming to a theater near you in real life one of these days again, I hope. But yeah, there's also a lot of I've been doing a lot of these kinds of discussions and talks throughout the past several months, and they are up on my YouTube channel as well. And you know, that's one thing that I actually feel really thankful for, is that so often when you're a musician, you would put up your music, right? Like I would put up a video of me playing the cello or performing, and thus, and also true for my colleagues. And I've loved during this pandemic that I've gotten to hear all of them talk, and say what they're doing during this pandemic, or what they're interested in, what they're we're having discussions finally, like you're getting to actually know other people that maybe you've worked with for years but didn't know about, like in the personal side. You didn't know how they spoke, you didn't know how they laughed, or how they cried. And God, that's beautiful. I mean, that's just like an amazing thing, I think, to have access to people's personalities in this way that we kind of didn't have, at least not in such a broad sense, before this pandemic. Yeah. So
lovely. Well, thank you again, Ashley, for being on this call today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for being here, all of you.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we shall all see you somewhere, probably on a Zoom screen somewhere.
Yeah.
Take good care. Bye for
All
now.
right. Bye-bye.